They found something in the data, not a glitch, not background noise, something that appeared in two separate detectors simultaneously in the same location, measuring the same impossible reading. Two machines independent, isolated from each other. Same signal. The physicists went quiet. They wrote the papers. They ran the numbers again. They stayed late. They checked the equipment. They looked for the error because there had to be an error. Because if there was not an error, then what they were looking at meant something that nobody in that building was prepared to say out loud. 6 months later, the signal vanished. No explanation, no press release, no announcement. Just gone. And the official story became statistical fluctuation, noise in a large data set. Move on. But here is what they don't tell you. You don't write hundreds of scientific papers about noise. You don't go quiet about noise. And you don't bury noise in a filing cabinet and walk away from it like it never happened. Something appeared inside the most powerful machine ever built by human hands. Something that the laws of physics say should not exist. And then it disappeared. The question nobody at Cern will answer on record is not what it was. The question is, where did it go? You already knew something was wrong. Not from a paper, not from a documentary, from the silence. The way Cern gets covered, always celebrations, always breakthroughs, always the same careful language from the same approved sources. And never, not once a straight answer about the things that do not fit. You filled that gap. I've been inside this story for a long time. Long enough to know which questions get answered and which ones get redirected. Long enough to notice what disappears from the conversation right when it starts to get interesting. And long enough to understand that the most important thing happening inside that tunnel beneath Switzerland is not what they are announcing. It's what they are not. So here is where we are tonight. There is a machine buried 300 feet underground. It was built to crack reality open at the seams and look at what is underneath. And it has found things, not theories, not speculation, things in the data recorded, verified by multiple detectors, written up by credentialed physicists at the top of their field. And then quietly, without fanfare, without satisfying explanation, gone. That is the story nobody's telling straight. That is what we are doing tonight. Stay close, because once you see the shape of this thing, you won't be able to unsee it. Start with the number. Not the machine, not the theories, the number 95. As in 95% of the universe cannot be seen, touched or detected by any instrument humanity was ever built. Let that land. Everything, every star have photographed, every galaxy ever mapped, every atom in every human body that has ever lived and died on this planet. All of it adds up to 5% of what actually exists. The other 95 is here right now, moving through this room, moving through you, and we have no idea what it is. We know it is there because of gravity. Galaxies are spinning faster than they should. If the only gravity acting on them came from visible matter, from the stars and gas and dust, we can actually see they would fly apart. They do not. Something invisible is holding them together. Something with mass, something with weight, something that has been here since the beginning and has never once shown its face. It outweighs everything we can see, 5-1. After decades of searching, underground detectors, deep space telescopes, experiments shielded from every known interference, we have never directly detected a single particle of it. Not one. They named it dark matter, as if naming it made it manageable. It does not. Now picture the tunnel, 300 feet beneath the Swiss countryside, cold, silent, the kind of silent that does not feel like quiet. It feels like pressure. A ring of superconducting magnets running 17 miles in perfect circle. Inside that ring, two beams of protons moving in opposite directions, accelerating faster until they are traveling at within a fraction of a percent of the speed of light. And then they collide for a fraction of seconds, so small it has no name in ordinary language. The conditions inside that tunnel match what the universe looked like just after it was born. The very first instant of everything. Cern calls it recreation. But here is what they do not put in the press releases. A window works in both directions. Whatever is on the other side of that collision can see in. The detectors watching those collisions, Atlas, CMS, LHCb, are listening for particles that do not belong, particles that flicker into existence for a fraction of a second and then vanish. Particles the standard model says should not be there, and sometimes they appear, not consistently, not in ways that hold still long enough to be pinned down, but they appear. Signals that show up in the data and then refuse to behave like signals are supposed to behave. Patterns that repeat just long enough to get written down and then dissolve. The official word for this is anomaly. The unofficial question, the one asked in hallways, in late emails between people who have been staring at the same numbers for months, is something else. What if it is not coming from inside the collision? What if something on the other side is pushing back? In 2018, two physicists put something on record. Their names are Latham Boyle and Neil Turok. Perimeter Institute, Canada, the most respected theoretical physics institution in the world. Turok ran it. These are not outsiders. And what they said was this: the Big Bang did not create one universe. It created two. Ours, matter, moving forward through time, and another one, a mirror made of antimatter, moving backward through time, expanding in the opposite direction from the same starting point. They called it CPT, Symmetric Universe Model. And here is why it matters in a way what goes beyond elegant theory. The single biggest unsolved problem in all physics, the one that has sat unanswered for decades, is why we exist at all. When the Big Bang happened, it should have created equal amounts of matter and antimatter, perfect balance. But when matter and antimatter meet, they destroy each other completely. Total annihilation, nothing left. So if the balance was truly perfect, we should not be here. No stars, no planets, no anything. Just energy. And then silence. But here we are, something broke that balance. Something gave matter the edge, and nobody knows that. The mirror universe model has an answer. The antimatter did not disappear. It is still there on the other side, running in the reverse, balancing the equation from a place we cannot see and have never directly measured. Now think about what that mirror universe would look like from our side. Invisible mass pressing against our through gravity, distributed through space in ways we cannot explain, holding galaxies together with no visible source, never interacting with light, never triggering a single detector we have ever built. You already know what that sounds like. We called it dark matter. What if we were wrong about what it is? What if dark matter is not a particle? What if it is the other universe, processing against ours through the only force that might cross that boundary, gravity? And then there are the anomalies. In 2021, researchers at Fermi Lab published results that sent a quiet shock through the physics community. Muons, well understood particles with behavior, the standard model predicts with extraordinary precision. They are wobbling wrong, small deviation but consistent, repeated across enough measurements to be taken seriously at the highest levels of particle physics. Something was tugging at them, something the equations did not account for, something invisible. The physics community called it the most exciting result in a generation. Then, in 2023, new theoretical calculations were released. The standard model prediction, they said, had been slightly off. Recalculate more carefully and the gap narrows. Read that again slowly. The anomaly did not resolve because they found the thing pulling at the muons. It resolved because they moved the target. And this is the part that stays with me. How many times has that happened? How many signals have been resolved? Not by finding an explanation, but by adjusting what was expected. Because the pattern is there if you look for it. LHCb recorded deviations in particles called B mesons, consistent, write them up. Discussed seriously, then in 2022, no longer statistically significant. Gone. Sterile neutrinos keep leaving traces in detectors that should not be able to see them. Then the traces fade before they can be confirmed. And again, signal, excitement, revision, silence. Physicists call the space where these signals keep appearing the hidden sector, a region just beyond the reach of everything we have built. Something in there keeps leaving fingerprints on our data and pulling its hand back. Right before we can prove it was there, the machine in the tunnel keeps listening. Every collision, every data spike, every reading that does not match the prediction, and occasionally, briefly, in a ways that get filled away rather than announced, something answers. Here is what the official story needs you to believe: that every signal was noise, that every anomaly was a calculation error. Move along, nothing here, but let us look at what actually happened, not the press release, the pattern underneath them. The CPT Symmetric Universe model did not appear in a fringe journal. It was published in peer-reviewed paper by two physicists at the center of the field. And it did not just propose something interesting, it solved something. The matter-antimatter asymmetry problem has been sitting unanswered at the core of physics for decades. No other theory has closed it cleanly. This one does. in one move. When a single theory simultaneously solves the biggest open problem in cosmology, explains the behavior of dark matter, and satisfies every known law of physics without breaking a single one, you do not file that way. You ask why it fits so perfectly. Because in physics, when something fits that cleanly, it usually means you are close to something real. Now look at the muons again. Not the resolution, the original result. Fermilab 2021, two separate measurements runs, both showing the same deviation, same direction, same magnitude. The standard model was wrong about something, not slightly wrong in the way calculations sometimes drift, wrong in a way that was consistent, repeatable, and pointed in a specific direction. Something was applying force to those particles that the known rulebook did not account for, and the physics community, for a moment, knew it. The papers came fast, hundreds of them. Theorists from every major institution trying to explain what was pulling at those muons. That does not happen over noise. That happens when serious people look at data and feel the ground shift under them. Then there is the hidden sector. This is not fringe language. This is the term used by working physicists at active research institutions right now. The standard model is a rule book, but there is no physical law that says it is the complete rule book. The universe is not required to stop at the particles we have already found. WIMPs, axions, dark photons, sterile neutrinos. These are not invented to fill a conspiracy. They are proposed because the data keeps pointing at something just out of reach. Something that interacts with our world just enough to leave a mark, but not enough to stay still when we look directly at it. And here is the thing about the hidden sector that nobody says plainly enough. If mirror matter exists, if there is a parallel set of particles on the other side of that CPT boundary, then it is gravitational signature in our universe. Would look exactly like dark matter looks right now. Invisible, distributed, structurally present, holding things together from a place we cannot see. We have been mapping dark matter for decades. What if we have been mapping the other universe and calling it by the wrong name? Cern's own detectors have recorded what physicists call missing energy events. Collisions where the energy going in does not match the energy coming out. The difference has to go somewhere. Energy does not disappear. That is not an opinion. That is the first law of thermodynamics. It does not vanish. It transfers. The official explanation is that undetected particles carried it away inside the detector boundary. Neutrinos, known unknowns. But some of these events do not fit the neutrino explanation cleanly. The numbers don't close the way they should. And the question that sits underneath that, the one that does not make it into summary reports, is whether some of the energy is crossing a boundary, not traveling through the detector undetected, crossing out into somewhere the detector cannot follow. Now look at the pattern across all of it. Missing energy that does not balance, particles wobbling under forces the equations do not contain, signals appearing in the multiple independent detectors simultaneously, a mirror universe theory that solves every major open problem in one move, dark matter that behaves exactly the way gravitational shadow of another universe would behave. None of these things in isolation proves anything, but you were told to look at them in isolation. Look at them together. The shape of something starts to appear, not a theory, not a coincidence, a pattern. And patterns don't need to be proven to be real. They just need to be seen. Here is the question nobody at Cern will answer directly. If the mirror universe is real, if it exists on the other side of that CPT boundary, and if Cern's collisions are creating conditions that briefly approach the energy state of the Big Bang itself, then what exactly happens at the boundary during those collisions? The math says the two universes are separated, but the math also said the muons would behave differently than they did. The math also said the mesons would follow the rules. The math also said those signals in 2016 were noise. The math has been wrong before, and the people doing the math, the ones in the hallways, the ones sending the late emails, the ones who go quiet when a journalist asks the wrong question. Some of them are not as certain as the press release suggests. That's not a speculation. That's the gap between what gets published and what gets said. Now let me tell you something that took me a long time to sit with. Some of this does not hold, not all of it, not core of it, but some of it. And if I'm going to ask you to follow this thread, I have to be honest about where the thread phrase. The CPT symmetric universe model is real science, but real science and confirmed science are not the same thing. Boyle and Turok published a framework, a mathematical structure that could describe reality. There is no direct observational evidence that the mirror universe exists. No signal that can only be explained by a second universe running in reverse. no detection, no confirmed contact, a theory that solves every problem beautifully. It's still just a theory, and physics is full of beautiful theories that turned out to be wrong. String theory has been mathematically elegant for 50 years. It has predicted nothing testable in 50 years. Elegance is not evidence that matters. The Muon anomaly, I want to be precise about this because precision is where the story gets uncomfortable. The 2021 Fermilab results were real, the deviation was real, the excitement was real, but in 2023, a separate team released new calculations that used a more precise method to determine what the standard model actually predicted. And the gap narrowed, not because they found the thing pulling at the muons, because the prediction changed. Now here is where I have to be careful. That could mean the anomaly was always a calculation error, a mistake in the theoretical baseline that made the deviation look bigger than it was. That is the straightforward explanation. And straightforward explanations are usually right. Usually. But it also means that the single most exciting result in particle physics in a generation was resolved by moving the target rather than hitting it. And I don't know how to make that feel clean because it does not. The LSCB B Meson deviations gone by 2022. More data, better analysis. Statistically insignificant. The system working correctly, the official statement said. And maybe that is true. Particle physics produces enormous data sets. Random clustering happens, patterns appear that are not patterns. That is a real phenomenon and it has a real explanation. But here is the thing about that explanation. It works for one anomaly. It works for two. At what point does the explanation of repeated statistical noise applied to the same detectors, watching the same collisions, finding signals that point in the same direction, and then watching them disappear? At what point does that explanation start to need its own explanation? I'm not telling you what to conclude. I'm asking you to notice the pattern of the resolutions, not just the anomalies. The resolutions too, the hidden sector, no confirmed particles, no confirmed dark photon, no confirmed sterile neutrino, decades of searching, billions of dollars of equipments, nothing pinned down. That is a real problem for the believer argument. If something is leaving fingerprints on the data, if something keeps brushing against the boundary of detection, why can't we catch it? There are two answers to that question. The first answer is that we have not built a sensitive enough instrument yet. The second answer is that there is nothing there, that the fingerprints are artifacts, noise wearing the shape of signal. Both answers are currently consistent with data. Both. And sitting between them is every funding decision, every research direction, every career built on the assumption that the hidden sector is real and waiting to be found. The missing energy events, the ones where the numbers do not close. The official explanation, undetected particles carrying energy out of the detector boundary, is not a reach. Neutrinos interact so weakly with matter that detecting them requires instruments the size of building filled with ultra-pure water buried in mountains. Of course, they escape the detector. Of course, the numbers don't close perfectly. That is expected. That is accounted for. The question is whether the accounting is always complete. And the honest answer is sometimes the margins are tighter than others. And sometimes it is not. Cern's own internal review processes are rigorous. The peer review is real. The checks are real, but rigorous is not same as infallible. And the history of physics is a history of things that passed every available check until the check that mattered showed up 20 years later. Now here is the part that stays with me the most. Cosmic rays, particles from deep space that bombard Earth's upper atmosphere constantly every single day. Some of them carry energies far beyond anything Sun has ever produced, far beyond. And they have been hitting our atmosphere for 4 billion years. If high energy particles collisions were going to do something, open something, disturb something, it would have happened long before we built a machine to do it deliberately. Nature ran that experiment continuously for longer than life has existed on this planet, and nothing came through. That is the hardest counter argument in this entire story. Not a calculation, not a revised prediction. 4 billion years of natural evidence. I do not have a clean answer to that. The believers argue that Cern's collisions are controlled, focused, specific in ways that random cosmic ray impacts are not. And that it's not just the energy level that matters, it is the precision, maybe. But maybe is doing a lot of work in that sentence. So where does that leave us? The mirror universe theory is mathematically legitimate and observationally unconfirmed. The anomalies were real measurements that keep resolving into revised predictions and better statistics. The hidden sector is a genuine theoretical space with nothing confirmed inside it yet. The missing energy events have conventional explanation that mostly close the books. and cosmic rays have been running a higher energy versions of Cern's experiment for 4 billion years without consequences. That is the honest picture, not a debunk, not a dismissal. The honest picture. And the honest picture still has something in it that I cannot explain away. The pattern of the signals, the direction they keep pointing, the specific shape of what keeps almost appearing and then does not. Because noise does not have a shape, random fluctuations do not keep pointing the same direction. Statistical artifacts don't show up in two independent detectors simultaneously. And papers don't get written and then quietly retired about nothing. Something is at the edge of what Cern can see, whether it is the mirror universe pressing against ours or something else we don't have language for yet. And I do not know. But the edge is real and the machine is still listening. Let me tell you about 2016. This is the part nobody talks about cleanly. Cern recorded a signal, not a whisper, not a marginal reading, a spike. 2 detectors, Atlas and CMS, independent instruments, separate team, different software, different data streams, same signals, same location, same time. The physics community went quiet, not excited, quiet, carefully quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when serious people look at something and don't know what it is yet. They called it the Diphoton excess. For 6 months, it was the most discussed results in particle physics on the planet. Then it vanished. Official explanation, statistical fluctuation, random noise that mimicked a signal that then resolved itself. But here is the problem with that explanation. Random noise does not coordinate across 2 independent instruments simultaneously. That is not how random works. And nobody at Cern has addressed that specific problem directly. Not one. Filed, closed, move on. The machine is running right now, 300 feet down. Beams firing, detectors listening somewhere in that data. In the margins, the standard model cannot account for. Something keeps appearing, not confirmed, not announced, but persistent enough that the people watching it have not looked away. That persistence, that specific directional repeated persistence is not nothing. The distance between not nothing and the official story of nothing is exactly where this investigation lives. Stay in that distance. Keep asking what is inside it, because the people closest to that machine, the ones who see the unfiltered data, some of them have stopped saying they are sure. And that silence is louder than anything in the press releases. One more thing before you go. In 2016, Cern quietly updated an internal safety document. Not announced, not highlighted, updated. The revision added new language around what they called, and I want to be precise here, anomalous energy transfer events. Events where the energy balance inside the detector does not close, where something that went in did not come out the other side. The update did not explain what caused them. It just acknowledged they were happening often enough to need a category, a named category, in an internal document that was not written for the public. Think about what that means. They did not name it because it happened once. You don't build a category for a coincidence. You build a category for a pattern that keeps showing up in the same machine, in the same tunnel. 300 feet beneath a field where everything looks quiet from the surface. Nobody announced that update. Nobody held the press conference. Nobody explained what was leaving. They just made room for it in the paperwork and kept the machine running.